Hello everyone, welcome back, and this is a series of videos. There's going to be 3 altogether, all about connecting the dots and which dots connects where and what exactly is the centre of the wheel. If you imagine it's all in a big wheel, which dots connect where? What is the centre of the wheel? What is the same thing that is connected to all others? What is the beating heart? The main focus from where all things emanate. Now I'm trying to connect dots here and hopefully we'll get somewhere with it. So I'm going to cover it in 3 videos, and this one is the first. And this first video is about a UK witness account. The second video is about significant locations and possible reasons why. I think that is really, really interesting, the locations. When you start to look at them, it's like, oh, really? Really? And the third video is all about these dots, how they are presented, received, and primarily how they are connected. So I hope you can stick with me on this. I think you'll find it interesting. I believe everything is connected. The dots at the moment, shall we say, are loosely scattered under different umbrellas, and I'm hoping to try and give a reason why I think these dots should be connected over the next 3 videos. So this is the first video, and at the end of this I'm going to take a wander down to the gifting site, give our gifts of food, but I'm going to go back to my house to record the main part of the video, and that will be the format for the next 3 videos. So I hope you enjoy it. I will now cut to the first connecting the dots, to the first video. Okay, and I'll see you later when we go to the gifting site. Alright, so as I've said to you earlier, showing you what the program is, what the plan is over the next 3 videos. So here we're going to be discussing about the location of Rendlesham. I don't know if you've heard of Rendlesham Forest. So we're looking at the southeast of the country. So on the first map here, we can give you an idea in the UK as to where it is. The whole idea, it was called a Rendlesham mystery. It's no mystery, and it's extremely well documented. It's a misnomer, really. There's good eyewitness evidence to support the events. So on this map you can see the location within the UK of the area that we're going to. So on the next map here we're going to zoom in and we'll see the location of Rendlesham here. It's in the Suffolk countryside. So it's the county of Suffolk. And you can see how close its proximity is to Orford. And we're going to come back to Orford. We're going to come back to that later. Probably in the next video, because that is quite important. So here on the next map, we have a closer view of the Rendlesham area. So we'll start by saying that Rendlesham was a military airbase, and it was a RAF base for the British Royal Air Force, and it was through an agreement which I think I'll explain in the second video. Through this agreement, it was a American base. It was given over to the Americans to use. Now, we had quite a lot of American bases in the country. So Rendlesham, the airfield near there is RAF Woodbridge, and that's where all of this happened. So on Christmas Day in 1980, a security patrol, just doing their regular duties, saw mysterious lights near the East Gate. Now, the East Gate is right on the edge of the perimeter fence of RAF Woodbridge. So the security officers thought it was an aircraft that had crashed into the Rendlesham forest. So they contacted the officer who was on duty, the commanding officer on duty, who was called Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt. He went to investigate the area along with the security guards. The security officers had witnessed a glowing object that was metallic in appearance with coloured lights. It had red and orange lights at the top, and underneath it, it had a bank of blue lights. So they attempted to approach the object, and as they got closer, it moved away. So it's got some kind of intelligent thought there. It manoeuvred carefully through the trees. So the animals they could hear in a farm nearby were going crazy. They were going absolutely crazy, and they were really distressed. Well, this was late at night, on a night shift really, early hours of the morning. You shouldn't be hearing any kind of animals at that time of night. So one of the servicemen, I think his name was Sergeant Jim Peniston, he later claimed to have encountered a craft of unknown origin while he was in the forest. And although there was no publicised mention of this at the time, and there's no corroboration from any of the other witnesses, he was able to draw a really good, accurate drawing of what he saw, which you should be able to see on the screen now. So the witnesses, all the other security officers, and the man in charge, Lieutenant Colonel Holt, they all saw different things, which is not unusual. So Holt, Colonel Holt, Lieutenant Colonel Holt, said the air felt very heavy and was full of electrostatic. It felt like the hair was standing on end. So 20 yards into the wood line, into the forest line, there was a craft, triangular in shape. And this is the drawing that Sergeant Peniston had drawn. It was very black and shiny, that was like onyx or glass. The sides had glyphs, what they thought were relief glyphs, so they were prominent from the surface. They were familiar to them, but they just didn't know what they were. They couldn't pinpoint it. And when they touched these, and I think it was Sergeant Peniston who touched them, he said he acquired a download of some sort, which is quite interesting, isn't it? So the craft took off, but they remained hovering in the distance, and the local police were then called. And all they could see were burn marks on the ground and scorch marks on the sides of the trees where this thing had come in. Now, the area above the tree canopy was quite small, and they couldn't make out how something could come down through that tree canopy. They didn't think it was wide enough, but it did. But it scorched the sides and the branches of the trees as it came down, and the ground. So after daybreak, on the morning of the 26th of December, the day after Christmas Day, the servicemen then returned to a small clearing near the eastern edge, near the eastern gate of the forest, and they found three small impressions. I think they were about something like that, 3 inches by about 7 inches across, oval shaped impressions in the ground, and they were in a triangular formation. So effectively, a tripod had landed there. I'm just going to put an image in so you can hopefully see that. And they obviously they inspected the burn marks on the branches and on the ground of nearby trees. Well, it should be said that sometime later in January, in the following year, 1981, the area of the forest was removed. Scorched trees were taken away, studied or something like that, no doubt. And the Forestry Commission, who owned the land and done all the planting on it, they stated upon, it was a subsequent inquiry by the media, why these particular trees had been removed. The response was that it's time to reap that crop. They removed a small section of forest, and all the trees would have been planted at the same time, so which kind of exposes them towing the government line, which is utter drivel, and frankly we expect nothing less than that type of response from that type of organisation. So 10:30 on the evening, the local police were called out again. This time they investigated and they saw 3 impressions in the ground in a triangular shape, and this was the 3 tripod legs. So the police stated in a report that they thought the impressions could have been made by an animal. Good God. Good God. An animal with 3 legs. Okay. So only official government bodies could dream up that kind of drivel. It beggars belief. And it goes right back to the standard Sasquatch response. You saw a bear. That's what it goes back to. So 2 days later, on the 27th, the flying object, the UAP, revisited the site. So immediately security called the commanding officer at the time, which was Lieutenant Colonel Holt. He was the night shift superior officer on duty. So he took a team with him to investigate. And he had the presence of mind to put a dictaphone in his pocket. So when he was describing what he could see, he had the audio, and they had somebody with night vision recording the audio, which was quite ahead of its day for 1980 to be recording night vision images. That makes for interesting listening, and you can actually download those recordings and listen to them. They're online. So the audio describes them as seeing bright light, very bright light, moving through the trees. So silently, it then divides into several lights. And at the time that it does that, it appears to have like dripping molten metal where it has released from the main central. It's almost like it's having babies, it's multiplying. So there was a vertical beam of light emanating from below one of the craft. They decided they had a Geiger counter. I think it's got a different name, but they went and measured the ground for radiation and all the trees for radiation, and they were well above safe and normal levels. That's quite dangerous for them to be around. So they decided at that point they're going to retreat. So there's no correcting reports recently saying that any of those men suffered from the radiation. So I don't know whether it was bad enough to cause them radiation sickness or cancers of any kind. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. So it was during this investigation that a flashing light was seen across the field to the east. And it was almost in line with a farmhouse that the witnesses had seen on the first night. And Orford Ness Lighthouse, and this is a little village that's 7 miles away, Orford Ness Lighthouse is on the coast. but they could also see that light at the same time. They could see the lighthouse blinking at the same time as this other light. So it was clearly doing the rounds. Now, I don't know what the reason for it, whether it was using the lighthouse as a guiding mark, but there is also, right beside there, 6 or 7 miles up the coast, is a nuclear power station called Sizewell B. So I don't know whether that's significant or not. Lieutenant Colonel Holt, he wrote a memo to MOD in the UK, and that runs all the sort of secure type of things, shall we say, national secure type of things. And he wrote a memo to them out of common courtesy. He's a United States Air Force man, so you'll have several copies. Some will go to him, to the United States, and some to here. So he wrote this memo. Now, what happened to that memo is interesting. So in his memo, he described the incident, saying there were 3 star-like lights which were seen in the sky, 2 to the north, 1 to the south, 10 degrees above the horizon. And Holt said that the brightest of these hovered for 2 or 3 hours and seemed to beam down a stream of light from time to time. Now, astronomers waded in and they explained these star-like lights as bright stars. Astronomers are almost as bad as the Forestry Commission, talking out of their posterior. So I've included on the screen for you here the memo that Lieutenant Colonel Holt sent to MUD. And it was supposedly never ever acted on, buried probably. My guess is it had a D notice, which means never to be seen again, never to see the light of day again. My guess is it had a D notice slapped on it. So the MUD stalled on this, total deniability, whenever a request for information was made. A 1983 Omni article, this is 3 years later, there was the base commander, not the duty commander, the base commander was Colonel Ted Conrad. And he recalls, his statement says, in 1983, recorded at the time, 3 years after the incident, shall we say, close to the time, he recalls 5 Air Force policemen spotted lights from what they thought was a small plane descending into the forest. So 2 men tracked the object on foot and came upon a large tripod-mounted craft. It had no windows, but was studded with brilliant red and blue lights. Each time the men came within 50 yards of the ship, Colonel Conrad then says it levitated 6 feet in the air and backed away. So it's definitely an intelligent force, isn't it? So they followed it for almost an hour through the woods and across a field until it took off at what he describes as phenomenal speed. So acting on the reports made by his men, Colonel Conrad began a brief investigation of the incident in the morning. He went into the forest himself. This is the man, he went there himself. He located the triangular pattern from the tripod that was made, that he assumed were made by tripod legs, and he interviewed 2 of the eyewitnesses and concluded that those lads saw something, but I don't know what it was. Now that is what he said in 1983. Fairly accurate, fairly comprehensive, do you not think? Definitely he has made observations. So that's within 3 years of the incident. My guess is that at the time that Lieutenant Colonel Holt went out with his dictaphone and with his investigative team, that he was accompanied by Colonel Conrad. It doesn't say that, but that's my guess. So fast forward to 2010, 30 years later, and Colonel Conrad changes his tune completely. So either he has got false memory syndrome, or he's running for office, or I don't know what's wrong with the guy, but this is he's now retired. So he said that he provided a statement about the incident to an investigator called Clark. He states, "We saw nothing that resembled Lieutenant Colonel Holt's descriptions either in the sky or on the ground." He says, and that we had people in position to validate Holt's narrative, but none of them could. He also criticised Holt for the claims in his affidavit, saying that, he really trashes Lieutenant Colonel Holt. He said he should be ashamed and embarrassed by the allegation to say that his country and the British government had conspired to hide this and tried to bury it and deceive the public over this issue. He should know better. So Conrad is showing us that he is holier than thou. And that really infuriates me, because what I'm thinking here is either Conrad was lying in 1983 when he backed up Lieutenant Colonel Holt's story, or is lying in 2010 when he's totally trashing it and denying it. So which is it? Were you lying then, or are you lying now? Colonel Conrad is totally discredited. There's no way you can take a word from him because he's contradicting himself. Which I thought that was quite an interesting sort of comment from a senior officer. So in 2010, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, who's now retired, he signed a notarized affidavit, which he summarised what had happened, basically reiterated it word for word, and stated he believed the event to be true, extraterrestrial, and it was covered up by the UK and the US. So he's reiterating exactly what he had said previously that caused Colonel Conrad so much offence. So let us bear in mind that the internet was not available in 1980. Now we've got all sorts of means for cross-referencing and asking for information. But like I say, it just wasn't available then. So what had not been taken into account is the village of Rendlesham is right beside RAF Woodbridge. And these people are not blind, deaf and stupid. They had been witnessing comings and goings for a long time. And they had been making notes and records of it. And they saw the events of this evening very clearly. So they were very aware of the events, and there was many people who had made good record of it. So there were 3 ladies who were involved in a local UFO UAP group, and they were determined to get to the bottom of the events. Now these are middle-aged ladies of a certain age. So one, Dot Street, Anne Hopton Scott and Brenda Butler. And what the mud failed to take into account and realise is that 3 persistent middle-aged ladies are not going to be told no. They went through all the channels available and got nowhere. So this would be writing letters by hand, ringing people up. They got absolutely nowhere. They just got stonewalled. Silly old biddies, we're not going to listen to you. So these ladies, then they went to Mud in Whitehall. This is the head office, the big cheese. They skipped all the monkeys and went straight to the organ grinder. So they were totally ignored. They sat there like numbskulls, totally ignored. And then they said they would go public and cause a stir. And they were not leaving until they were seen. So they had all day. They had all day tomorrow. They had all week. They had all next week. They had no particular agenda. And they had no intention of leaving till they got sorted. Well, this ruffled a few feathers. So they were sort of shuffled along, but Mud did eventually see them. And they said, "Oh, yes, we received a report." Oh, a report? Oh, yeah. We received a report by a Lieutenant Colonel Holt, an area is pricked up. We've not seen a report. Oh, well, it was nothing. It was dismissed. We didn't believe a word of it. It was just rubbish, really. And we didn't take it seriously. Not taking a report made by a senior base commander, a night shift commander from that base, not taking it seriously from a United States Air Force base. Don't believe a word of that. Come off it. So some 2 years later, Dot Street, she received a call from a ufologist based somewhere in the USA, and he'd been very interested in the whole case. And she was taken aback by him contacting her, and he said through the Freedom of Information Act in the United States, he had located the Holt memo, and would she like a copy? You bet she did. She couldn't believe her luck. So she then contacted Lieutenant Colonel Holt. Hello, my name is Mrs. Dot Street. Now he must have wondered what she was up to. I wonder if you'd like to meet me sometime. She actually records this, and this is what she's saying, and it's hilarious. And he's saying, what's this about? What's this really? Well, it's in relation to a memo that you wrote in 1980. And the silence, you can hear the silence. Oh, okay. Anyways, they all met him like a delegation of witches. So they're not to be messed. In this country, it's sort of like ladies carry handbags. You call it a purse, but they call it handbags here. And these ladies had handbagged everybody, like being walloped by your purse. They were having none of it. You do not tell middle-aged ladies no. And they absolutely went for it. The story now was out in the open, and many years later, I think it was in the year 2000, was when we got the Freedom of Information Act. And that's a long time. So I don't agree with making everything public. I think that you've got security of a country. But for stuff like this, I mean, so many people had witnessed it. Why go to all this extent of covering things up? And the eyewitness accounts from Rendlesham include quite diverse events. They say there are many dark energies in the forest. People who don't want to go into the forest. Some people say it feels like a massive foreboding and they don't want to enter, they don't want to go, and they just get this feeling that they don't want to go in the forest. So it has a local nickname of Blair Witch. Certain areas have it as Blair Witch. I'm guessing that may be more to do with infrasound and ultrasound to keep people away, whether that's by the off-planet visitors. I mean, it could even be by the military base, because we do use sound as a weapon. So all the local people have witnessed lights in the forest, and rather like the Native Americans, if you see lights in the forest, you don't follow them. And that's pretty much what these people were saying. Others have witnessed cryptids in the forest, which I thought was quite interesting. So I'm going to bring this episode to a close with a question for you. Is there a dimensional opening in Rendlesham, in the forest there? And if so, why? A lot of this has a great deal of similarities to the area that I research, and I'm going to go into that in the next episode. The next episode, we're going to look at the location and the area of Rendlesham. And when you see what is around there, when you look at the maps, you may find that quite interesting. It certainly raised eyebrows for me. So for now, we're going to go into the forest and we're going to do our gifting at the tree and catch you there. Thank you for watching so far and staying with me on that. It was interesting, was it not? I can see some bags. Bags have been scattered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and have a collection up first of all the stuff that's around. Let me just do a circle. We've got one bag down there, another bag over there, peanut butter lid there, peanut butter jar, looks pretty empty there. Bags hanging from, one bag hanging from the tree, and there should be 2 bags. Let me have a look, see if I can see anything else. There's only one bag, isn't there? That's a glass jar. I usually bring plastic, but that one is glass. Empty. I'm going to have a look at that in a minute. Can't see the net, the nylon bags that I usually put the apples in. It's not visible to me. I don't know what this is over here. So my guess is that that has been taken elsewhere. Oh, what was that? It's in that direction. Okay. Let's just have a look. Oh! No, it's just fir cones. Here we are. Here we are. Here's the bag. The nylon, empty nylon bag. Nothing in it. Apples gobbled. All gobbled. Gobbled, gobbled. Right, let's just have a look here at the jar. Label's gone. Oh, slug. 2 slugs on it. So we've got a bag and a jar. They have to be collected up. Pop those here. And then we've got another bag. Plastic bag. So that now means it's soggy as there's a hole there, hole there. We are 2 bags astray. I usually bring 4 bags. That's standard. Oh look, sunlight's just come out. Isn't that lovely? Had about a month of rain. And it feels like, what's that through there? Looking on this tree here. It feels like a month of rain. Those massively loud bells are still there. I'll have to bring some quieter ones because they're just too loud. Another bag here. They've opened the top of that. There's no holes in that. Ah, yes, there's a slit along the bottom. Can you see it there? That's a slit along the bottom. Alright, the first thing I've got is these are little licorice sticks. Here they are. So I'm going to just place those in here. Then I've got some almonds, which are here. I'll stick those on there. And I love these crystallized kiwi fruits. They seem to have gone down pretty well. I think I will continue getting those. And hazelnuts. I'll pop those in there. And I think the last thing is some Brazil nuts here. There you go, some little Brazil nuts. If I can find some really nice incense sticks. I'm going to put these incense sticks. I've had to record that several times because I kept saying incest sticks. Completely different thing. Crazy. So there you have it. That's what we've got today. Nice set of goodies for everyone. So, hazelnuts, Brazil nuts, some licorice sticks, some crystallized kiwi fruit and some almonds. And then on the tree up here we have some apples. Lovely red apples. Okay. Hey, thank you everybody. Thank you for watching this week. And that was episode 1. So next week in episode 2 we're still going to be talking about Rendlesham, but we're talking about the location. And like I said earlier on in this video, the location of where Rendlesham is very, very significant. And it resonates with what I see here as well. It resonates for me where the area is that I am researching have similar things. So just have a look and see what you think. So we'll see you in 2 weeks' time for connecting the dots, and that'll be locations and their significance. Thank you. Bye.